Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this third joint webinar series organized by Chemistry Department, Faculty of Sciences and Mathematics, Universitas Diponegoro, and also Chemistry Section, School of Distance Education, University Science Malaysia. Today, I am very pleased as your moderator, and in this webinar, there is two speakers will give talks into this webinar. First speaker from Chemical Science Program, School of Distance Education, University Science Malaysia, CHM Eda Yohana Arifin, PhD. Good afternoon, Dr. Eda Yohana. How are you today? Okay. And the second speaker is from Chemistry Department, Faculty of Sciences and Mathematics, Diponegoro University, Insinyur Marcelinus Kriswardana, PhD. Good afternoon, Mas Marcel. And before the presentations begin, allow me to read today's joint webinar outline. First, there will be opening speech from Head of Chemistry Section, University Science Malaysia, Dr. Tanwini. And the second is the first speaker, Dr. Eda Yohana Arifin. And then after that, there will be a second speaker. He is Marcelinus Kriswardana, PhD. After that, there will be a question and answer section. So for the all audience, if you want to ask to the speaker, you can put it in the chat box, or maybe you can raise your hand in the section. And then the last is closing. Before going further, please welcome to Dr. Tanwini to give opening speech. Hello, Dr. Tanwini. How are you today?
Hi, Pak Dharma. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. So
Okay.
maybe you will give the opening speech,
Okay.
and the time is yours. Please,
Okay.
Dr. Tanwini.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and selamat petang dari Malaysia. So thank you, the moderator, for today's session, Pak Dharma. First of all, on behalf of the Chemical Sciences Program, School of Distance Education, University Science Malaysia, I would like to thank the Chemistry Department, Faculty of Science and Mathematics, Universitas Diponegoro Undip, for making this joint webinar series on chemistry possible. And I was informed that today Prof. Adi is unable to attend in this webinar due to official duty. However, I would like to express my gratitude to both Prof. Adi Damawan and also Dr. Yayu Astuti for their recent official visit to University Science Malaysia last week. So during this visit, we discussed many areas for collaboration between our institutions, and I'm hopeful that these discussions will lead to positive and also impactful outcomes. So today is our third webinar on chemistry, and we have three more planned, each focusing on different topics. So I hope that all will find these sessions informative. Thank you for being here today. Pak Dharma, I pass it back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the interesting opening speech from Dr. Tanwini, and also Dr. Tanwini always come to our webinar series. Thank you for your time. I hope I can get you in personal later. And after that, we move to the talk. It will be delivered by Dr. Eda Yohana Arifin. She is going to talk about the future of sensing, exploring uphammer-based biosensor. But before the presentation begin, allow me to introduce the speaker, and I will show my screen. Let me show you my screen. Okay. Can you see me? Yes, Dr. Eda. Okay. Yeah. Dr. CHM Eda Yohana Arifin, PhD. Right now, she is a university lecturer in Chemical Sciences Program, School of Distance Education, University Science Malaysia. She has research interest in chemical sensor and biosensor and also nanomaterials. She has a lot of publication in Google Scholar and Scopus. There is 13 publication with H index is 5. And also in ResearchGate, she has 15 publication with 6 H index. Her educational background, she obtained Bachelor in Science in Chemical Technology Faculty Science and Technology University Kebangsaan Malaysia in 2006, and then she received her Master of Science in Chemistry Faculty Science and Technology University Kebangsaan Malaysia in 2011, and then she obtained PhD degree in Analytical Chemistry, Faculty Science and Technology University Kebangsaan Malaysia in 2018. Right now, she is a university lecturer in Chemical Sciences Program, School of Distance Education, University Science Malaysia, with product specialist, biosensors, biogen technology, SD, and PhD Malaysia. And before she become a lecturer, she was a postdoctoral researcher in University Kebangsaan Malaysia for 2019 until 2022 period. She received a few awards. There is Dana Modal Insan in 2019 until 2020 and 2022, and then Silver Award in Pencipta 19 in 2019. She also received a scholarship. It is called My Brain Scholarship, Ministry of Education Malaysia in 2013 until 2016. There is a few publication from her with the title Highly Sensitive of an Electrochemical DNA Biosensor Detection Towards Toxic Microalgae, Alexandrium minutum, in Microchemical Journal. And the second publication is Hexaferrocenium 3-hexaisothiocyanato iron 3 3-hydroxonium complex as a new DNA intercalator for electrochemical porcine DNA biosensor. And it's published in Scientific Report. So it is the CV of our first honorable speaker, Dr. Eda Yuhana. So let's start the webinar. Dr. Eda Yuhana, there will be around 25 up to 30 minutes for you to talk. So I give you the time and the screen, and please welcome to our honorable speaker, Dr. Eda Yuhana Arifin. The time and screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dama. I will share my screen.
Okay, please, you can share your screen. Okay, already seen.
Okay. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. Okay, let us start our presentation. Okay, what is sensor? Sensor is a device or component that detects changes in its environment and respond by converting these changes into a measurable signal, which can be read or interpreted. Okay, in chemistry, a sensor is a device or a material that can detect the present concentration or activity of a specific chemical substance called an analyte and converts this information into a measurable signal. Okay, the sensor interacts chemically or physically with the analyte, resulting in a change that can be measured, such as a change in electrical, optical, thermal, or magnetic properties. Okay, what is biosensor? A biosensor is a type of analytical device that combines a biological component with a physical-chemical detector to detect and measure specific substances, often at very low concentrations. The key feature of a biosensor is its ability to recognize a particular biological analyte, such as enzymes, antibodies, or DNA, and convert this recognition into a measurable signal. We call it biosensor if the analytical device combines a biological components with a physicochemical detector. Okay, these are the components of a biosensor. We have sample analytes or targeted samples. Okay, this analyte will interact or react with the bioreceptors. The biological recognition element is the core component that specifically interact with the target analysis. It can be an enzyme, antibody, nucleic acid, microorganism, cell, or other biomolecules. And the transducer convert the interaction between the analyte and the biological element into a measurable signal. The type of signal generated depends on the nature of the transducer, which can be electrochemical, optical, piezoelectric, or thermal. The signal is proportional to the concentration of the target analyte. And then the signal processor, it generates signal and display in a readable format, often as a concentration value or a graphical representation. Okay, the working principle of the biosensor. Okay, biorecognition, the biological element interact with the target analyte. The transduction, this interaction produce physical or chemical change, example, a change in electric current, light emission, or temperature. Signal processing, the transducer capture this change and transform it into a detectable signal, which is then amplified and processed to provide a quantifiable output. Okay. These are the types of biosensor based on the biorecognition. First, we have enzyme-based biosensor, antibody antigen-based biosensor, DNA or aptamer-based biosensor, and the whole cell biosensor. Okay, biosensors are needed because they provide rapid, sensitive, and specific detection of target molecules across various applications. A biosensor technology is important in decentralization of laboratory analysis, replacement of costly hardware, continuous online real-time analysis, replacement of existing bioassay, remote sensing or adverse environments, high throughput biology or omic, and personalized medicine. Okay, biosensors are often designed as portable, so it's easy to use. We make it easy to use device, making them accessible outside of laboratory setting. This portability is vital for point of care diagnostic in remote or underserved area, home testing, and field testing for environmental monitoring. Okay, we go to the DNA biosensor. Okay, this is the DNA structure. DNA structure is double helix. Okay, it contains base pair, phosphate group, and sugar. Phosphate group and sugar are the DNA backbone. There are 4 bases in DNA, which is adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. Okay, what happened during DNA hybridization? Okay, we need to understand what is DNA hybridization. Okay, DNA hybridization is a molecular biology technique where 2 complementary strands of DNA bind or hybridize to form a double-stranded structure. This process occurs through the pairing of complementary nucleotide bases, adenine with thymine and cytosine with guanine, via hydrogen bonds. Okay, the technique is used to detect, measure, or analyze specific sequences of DNA in a sample. Okay, size and base content and sequence influence the hybridization. Okay, these are the basic requirement of DNA biosensor. First, we need a perfect mesh of DNA strand and a stable double-stranded DNA. So it means it's a strong hybridization. And one or more base pair mismatch, it means it's a weak hybridization. Okay, this is my PhD research. Okay, this biosensor is for environmental monitoring. I fabricate this biosensor for E. coli DNA detection in water. In this research, I'm using hollow silica microsphere as a DNA immobilization matrix and use AQMS. Okay, AQMS as a DNA hybridization label. And I'm using DPV. Okay, this biosensor can detect E. coli DNA from 10 powered by -12 until 10 powered by -2 micromolar. And it can be reused until 3 times. Okay, this slide showed the stepwise fabrication of E. coli DNA biosensor. I'm using gold nanoparticles to enhance the electron transfer. I'm using glutaraldehyde as a linker, AQMS as a label, so it can be measured using DPV. DPV is a differential pulse voltammetry. It's an electrochemical technique used to measure the current response of a system when series of potential pulse are applied. Okay, table 4 showed a comparison between electrochemical DNA biosensor and the cultural method in detecting E. coli DNA in water sample. Okay, this one also my PhD research and detecting E. coli DNA, but for this research, this label free and use impedimetric technique. Okay, this biosensor, it can be reused for 2 times. It can detect E. coli DNA from 10 powered by -10 until 10 powered by -5 micromolar. And the detection is based on the resistance. Okay, this biosensor is also for environmental monitoring. Oh, sorry, not this one. This one. Okay, this biosensor is also for environmental monitoring. It has been designed to detect A. minitum DNA in water. In this sensor, we are using poly-NBA microsphere used for the matrix DNA immobilization site. And we are using AQMS as a label, and it can detect A. minitum DNA from 10 powered by -15 until 10 powered by -5 molar. Okay, these are the examples of DNA biosensor research for food safety. Okay, we use it to identify contaminants such as porcine DNA or allergen in food. Okay, now we go to the aptamer biosensor. Aptamer biosensor is a type of biosensor that use an aptamer. Aptamer is a short single-stranded DNA or RNA sequence as the biological recognition element to bind specifically to a target molecule. Aptamer are synthetic oligonucleotides or peptides that can be designed to have high affinity and specificity for a wide range of targets, including proteins, small molecules, ions, or whole cell. Okay, these are the differences between aptamers and DNA. Okay, for DNA, the structure are double-stranded. The binding target, it will bind to specific DNA target, and the stability is highly stable. And the aptamer, the structure is single-stranded, but aptamer can fold into complex 3D shapes. It's designed to bind to specific targets such as proteins, molecules, or ions, and it's more stable, especially DNA aptamer. Okay. Aptamer biosensor might be better than a DNA biosensor when the target is not a nucleic acid. Example, proteins, small molecules. Small molecules is antibody, ions, or pathogen. And its high specificity is when the sample, we need high specificity for a complex target. It is difficult to detect with DNA biosensor. So aptamer biosensor is better to be used. Okay, DNA biosensor might be better when the target is nucleic acid and the detection of specific sequences is required. Okay, this is, okay, aptamer biosensor, it's so stable in robustness, it's easily synthesized, versatility in design, fast and real-time detection, and flexibility in surface immobilization. These are some of the methods to design the aptamer. We have SELEX. SELEX is an old method. SELEX means systematic evolution of ligands by exponential enrichment. We have in silico, is a computational. It can simulate aptamer folding and predict potential interaction with target molecules before actual selection. And the third is high throughput sequencing and machine learning. It integrates a high throughput sequencing with machine learning to analyze and optimize the aptamer library. Okay. The potential of aptamer biosensor. Aptamer can be designed for a wide range of targets, including small molecules, proteins, and whole cells. They open a new avenue for biosensing that were difficult to achieve, especially with antibodies. New approach for cancer detection, environmental monitoring, and personalized medicine. Okay, as a conclusion, why biosensors are important is for early disease detection and diagnosis. It's a real-time and rapid analysis. It's portable and user-friendly. We can use it for environmental monitoring, for food safety, for medical diagnostic, and non-invasive monitoring. Okay, that's all from me.
Okay, thank you so much for the talk, Dr. Eja Yohana. It's very interesting topic, biosensors, and I think it's very prospect. So before we are going to the second speaker, maybe we can take photo together as a documentation. So please to all audience to on your camera because we are going to take photo together. Okay, please to all audience to on your camera. So Dr. Yayu, who will be help me to photo?
Okay, I will take the photo.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
be ready, everyone. One, maybe we can. Okay, saya akan hitung 4 ya. Ada 4 slide ya. So this one is part 1. Smile. Okay. Second part. third part, and the last. Okay, thank you, Pak Damar. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Biayu, for your help to take the photo. So after Dr. Eda Yohana, we are going to the uh, Marcelinus Kriswadana. Where are you, Mas Marcel? Because I usually called him as Mas. Yeah. Hello, Mas Marcel.
Ya,
Are you
halo.
ready? Yeah, are you ready?
Oh, Mas Damar. Ya, I'm ready. Was a little bit nervous.
Oh yeah, same with me, same with me. Okay. Before Mas Marcel, before Dr. Marcel will give the talk, let me introduce him first, and I will show his CV. So let me share the screen first. Wait. Uh, yeah. Can you see me, Mas Marcel?
Yes.
Can you see the screen? Okay.
Yeah.
So he is our second speaker, Insinyur Marcelinus Kriswardana, PhD. Right now, he is a lecturer in Department of Chemistry, Faculty of Science and Mathematics, Diponegoro University. He works in Bioelectrochemistry Research Group, Biochemistry Laboratory. His research interest is there is five. First, microbial and enzymatic fuel cells. Second, electrochemical biosensors. Third, wearable and implantable medical devices. Fourth, energy materials and process. Five, bioenergetics and metabolism. Here is so much publication that we can see. There is 120 publications in Google Scholar with age index up to 26, and maybe he is one of the highest in Undip. And in Scopus, he has 78 publications with 23 age index. He obtained a PhD degree in Neo Energy Engineering, Seoul National University of Science and Technology, South Korea, in August 2018. Before that, he obtained a Master Engineering in Department of Chemical Engineering, Diponegoro University, Indonesia, in 2013, and also he received a Bachelor Engineering in Department of Chemical Engineering, Diponegoro University, Indonesia. His professional experience right now, he is assistant professor of bioelectrochemistry, Department of Chemistry, Faculty of Science and Mathematics, Diponegoro University since April 2022. Before that, he was a postdoctoral fellow at Physics Research Center, LIPI, now Fuel Cell Materials and Hydrogen Research Group, Advanced Materials Research Center, BRIN, in October 2021 until March 2022. And he was a lecturer of Chemical Engineering Department, Institute Teknologi Indonesia, in October 2018 until March 2022. He was also worked in research and bioprocess engineer at Algateh International SDN PhD Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So Dr. Marcel, we've been living in Malaysia around 2 years in October 2013 until January 2015. So maybe she recognized well Malaysia, yeah, Dr. Marcel. And
Ya,
also
boleh sikit-sikit.
he was a worker in quality control at PT Nauf Gypsum Indonesia, Cikampek, Indonesia in 2013, since May until August. So he in industry and also as a lecturer. He received so many awards. There is a young lecturer with the third most productive publications, Diponegoro University in 2023, and top 2% work researcher based on citation metric, Elsevier and Stanford University 2021. Best 500 Indonesian scientists based on Sinta 3-year score, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology of Indonesia in 2020. Best Dissertation Award, Seoul National University of Science and Technology, South Korea 2018. And then Best Indonesian PhD Student in Korea, Perhimpunan Pelajar dan Mahasiswa Indonesia di Korea, Perpika, and Indonesian Embassy in Korea, South Korea 2018. We also receive a few scholarships. There is awardee EEME Laboratory Scholarship, Seoul National University of Science and Technology, South Korea. And also he was awardee to Dokwon Scholarship, to Dokwon Landfill Management, South Korea. And also he received a fast track scholarship, Simolek Kemendikbud Indonesia. There is a few selected publication. Maybe I will read two because Dr. Marcel has a lot of publication. It's very productive. One of them is fabrication of mediatorless or membraneless glucose or oxygen-based biofuel cell using biocatalysts including glucose oxidase and lactase enzymes. It published in scientific reports. And the second is co-immobilization of glucose oxidase and catalase for enhancing the performance of a membraneless glucose biofuel cell operating under physiological conditions that it published in nanoscale. Okay, maybe it is about the introduction of Dr. Marcellinus Criswardana, PhD. So today he is going to talk about electrochemical glucose sensors developments over time. So I give you 25 until 30 minutes, Dr. Marcel. I think it's enough, yes?
Okay,
So,
yes, enough.
the time and the screen is yours. Please, Dr. Marcel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Damar. Did you seen the presentation?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Invite me as a speaker in this webinar. I want to a little bit nervous. I want to share about my my work when I was a PhD student, and my study so far about the glucose biosensor and also glucose biofuel cell. Okay. Electrochemical glucose sensor developments over time. Okay, the content is introduction, generation of electrochemical glucose sensor, advancement in electrochemical glucose biosensing, challenges and future directions, and a little bit introduction of our lab. Okay, we start from diabetes mellitus. Diabetes mellitus is one of dangerous disease in the world. Around 500 million adults are living with diabetes, and over 3 in 4 adults with diabetes live in low and middle income countries. So in the high income countries, the potential of diabetes is very low compared to low and middle income country. Okay, diabetes is responsible around 7 million deaths in 2021, or 1 every 5 seconds. And diabetes cause at least the health the spend money in health, yeah. And also there are 2 types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2, but the high risk is in type 2 diabetes, yeah, because insulin resistant. You can see insulin resistant. Type 1 is insulin dependent, but type 2 is insulin resistant. So the insulin resists with the glucose activity, like that. Okay, this the importance of diabetes management. Yeah. That why it is so important. First is we should continues monitoring the diabetes because the glucose very fluctuative. Glucose in our body is fluctuative. Sometimes when we so many eat rice and low activity, the the glucose content in our body is rise. But when we so many activity, the glucose reduce. That's why the continue monitoring is important for diabetes management. Yeah, especially for diabetes patient. Okay, and then this minimal invasive for the diabetes patient and get the optimal therapeutic intervention, and in the end, this diabetes management system can improve the quality of life. Okay, and we go to the electrochemical glucose sensor. What are electrochemical glucose sensor? Yeah, electrochemical glucose sensor are innovative devices. So it is devices designed to measure blood glucose level. They operate based on electrochemical principle, allowing accurate and rapid analysis. And then there are three types of electrochemical glucose sensor so far. The portable one, the conventional one, the portable. You can buy in the apothec, and wearable glucose sensor and implantable glucose sensor. The wearable glucose sensor is like a watch, jam tangan, and implantable like alat pacu jantung or something like that. This is the history of glucose sensor. Glucose enzyme electrode first developed in 1962, and commercial glucometer is first in 1975. Okay, then in the 2000, the wearable glucose sensor are built firstly, and then 2010 they developed the paper-based sensor. Paper-based. Why paper-based? Because back to the background, three from four adult with diabetes is from middle and low countries. That's why the low cost or paper-based sensor is very helpful for them. If the sensor very expensive, they cannot use the sensor for diabetes management. Okay, in the future, you can measure the glucose not from your blood. You can use your tear, air mata, saliva, sweat, keringat, and urine. Also, you can detect that glucose from that sources. Okay, these 5 famous glucose biosensor scientists: Anthony P.F. Turner, Sergei Kosnier, Evgeny Katz, Joseph Wang, and Lou Gorton. Maybe so many biosensor scientists, but this the top 5 famous and most of them is come from biochemistry background with the specific focus on bioelectrochemistry. And the first question is how glucose biosensor work. Maybe this not many research about the sensor. So I want to explain the easy example about the glucose sensor. Okay, when we add sorry, okay. Okay, when we add 0.1 millimolar of glucose, the amperometric, the current starting to up, and then we add again 1.5 up again, well, up again, and from this amperometric curve, we can average this one. We can average this one, yeah. Average this one, become this one. Become this one. And this is this we call apparent Michaelis-Menten curve. Yeah. So for the student, if you familiar with Michaelis-Menten, this is the apparent or semu. Apparent Michaelis-Menten semu. Okay, and then after we got Michaelis-Menten curve, what next? Okay, next we get the sample. We get the sample, and with the amperometric electrolyte, okay, amperometric, and then we add the sample here. We add the sample, and then the current will increase. Will increase same with this one. Oh, sorry. Okay, and we can measure, for example, 6 microampere. Okay, now we search 6 microampere minute. This one. Okay, and then we tarik garis and see. Okay, so in the sample contain around 0.4 or 0.5 micromolar of glucose. That's the simple. Okay. Okay, and then the next is the generation of electrochemical glucose sensor. There are 4 generations of glucose sensor. The generation 1 is, the first generation is indirect glucose sensor. The second one is indirect glucose sensor but with mediator. The third generation is direct glucose sensor, and fourth generation is non-enzymatic glucose sensor. Okay, the advantage and disadvantage of glucose sensor based on their generation. Yeah. So in general, on the enzymatic glucose sensor is very simple and high selectivity and specificity, because we know that enzyme have a specific substrate to do the activity, right? And the disadvantages is the presence of H2O2 during the reaction will block the activity of glucose oxidation reaction. And in the fourth generation non-enzymatic, okay, they have high stability but low specificity. Because there are no enzyme, and then if we add other substrate, they can change the amperometric curve, but low production cost as do not use enzyme. Okay, this is the indirect glucose oxidation. The glucose convert to gluconolactone and gluconic acid due to the activity of flavin cofactor in the glucose oxidase, FAD to FADH2 or FADH2 to FAD with the redox reaction. In the same time, because the glucose oxidase is need oxygen to do the enzymatic reaction, they also convert oxygen to H2O2, where H2O2 can interrupt the activity of glucose oxidase. Okay, this the glucose oxidase is the key enzyme. The other enzyme used is glucose dehydrogenase or GDH. And these two enzymes produce gluconic acid and also hydrogen peroxide during the glucose oxidation reaction. And then the electron transfer, the electrochemical sensor consists of electrode coated with glucose oxidase, and from and then glucose will be oxidized and electrons are transferred from glucose oxidase to electrode. You can see in the cyclic voltammetry in the right side, in the right side. When glucose, there are a pair of FAD and FADH redox peak at minus 0.54 versus AgCl. And when we add glucose, the reduction peak of FAD/FADH increase, and from the increasing the redox peak, you can get the current versus glucose concentration, and you can make the apparent mechanism same before use amperometric, but this use cyclic voltammetric. We can make the Michaelis-Menten curve using different method, but the INT is same. In the second generation, we can add the mediator. Yeah, so mediator can mediate electron from enzyme to electrode. One of mediator is ferrocene. Yeah, ferrocene derivative can be used, or quinones, or benzoquinone or other. Okay, mediator are small molecules that shuttle electron between the enzyme and electrode. That the mediator can improve the efficiency of electron transfer. Maybe the activity of enzyme is very low, or the flavin cofactor is deeply inside the enzyme, so the transfer electron cannot reach the electrode, so the transfer electron is low. So the mediator, yeah, is like shuttle bus. They can go to you like ojol. Right? They go to you and bring you to your destination. Okay. Okay, the reaction mechanism almost same with the before, but in this case the mediator shuttle electron between the enzyme and electrode. You can see there are one pair of ferrocene redox peak at minus sorry, not minus 0.5, I wrong. At 0.2 and 0.6 volt, yeah. You can see the reduction and oxidation peak shift upward as increasing glucose sensor. Okay, and in the third generation is in direct enzymatic glucose sensor. So we use in the first generation we usually use oxygen in aerobic condition, because we know that glucose oxidation is need oxygen. But in this case, in electrode we add the nano materials, yeah, the conductive nanomaterial, which help the enzyme to do the glucose oxidation reaction without the presence of oxygen. Okay. In this case, the achieve their direct electron transfer between the enzyme and electrode, eliminating the need for mediator and peroxide production, because this condition is anaerobic, no oxygen, so no peroxide production in the system. And this achieved through the use of nanomaterial, for example, and advanced with high accuracy, give the high accuracy, high stability, and reduce the interference. Okay, can see the redox, the glucose oxidation peak, yeah, increase the electrical double layer shift upward, yeah, from the position in number 2, and we inject glucose, and the electrical double layer shift upward, and there is a little peak. The peak is the glucose oxidation peak. It means glucose oxidation reaction is work here. Okay, this the fourth generation of glucose sensor is non-enzymatic glucose sensor. So we use the material, and the material metal or nanoparticle or something like that to contact with glucose to oxidize the glucose. The non-enzymatic glucose sensor can use metals, alloy, or bimetallic, carbon-based material, metal oxide, or layered double hydroxide. Yeah. They use specific electrode materials, but this material is relative cheap, but the synthesis is very expensive, I think. Okay. Okay, and this advancement in electrochemical glucose biosensing. First is you can use metal nanostructure, for example, gold nanoparticle, or you can use dendritic gold nanostructure, or you can use silver nanoparticle in your electrode structure to increase the conductivity, so the electron transfer increase. Okay, maybe we not only metal nanostructure, maybe the carbon nanostructure also can be used. You can combine the metal nanostructure with carbon nanostructure, for example, carbon nanotube, CNT, or graphene oxide or reduced graphene oxide as the anchor of your structure. Okay. In my experience, the multi-wall carbon nanotube is better as anchor compared to single wall carbon nanotube due to the layered multi-wall carbon nanotube can load the enzyme higher than single wall. And you can use multi-enzyme electrochemical glucose sensor. If you remember that in glucose oxidation reaction, there are also a reaction from oxygen to peroxide, and peroxide will block the glucose oxidase activity. And in this case, we can use another enzyme which use peroxide as the substrate. For example, the catalase. Yeah. For example, catalase or HRP, horse-radish peroxidase. The catalase and HRP use peroxide as substrate and convert them into HO2. It makes the activity of glucose oxidase not disturbed by the presence of peroxide, because peroxide already converted to HO2 by catalase or HRP. Okay, next is carbon graphene quantum dots. This the quantum dot. You can combine with other. The quantum dot have higher surface area which can load the more enzyme. Can immobilize more enzyme in their surface. So the sensor is more sensitive than other structure which have low enzyme loading. Okay, these challenges and future direction. What we want in the future: accurate and stable portable glucose sensor. Accuracy and stability is one of issue here. Different structure of electrode of the sensor, different accuracy and different stability. The next is about the compact we want a device that small, easy to bring, and low cost effective, because we are in a middle income country, so the cost is a little bit become the issue here. And the next is painless convenient. How glucose sensor for especially implantable glucose sensor is not pain when someone try to fix it in her or his body. Okay, this the challenge is how to immobilize glucose oxidase or glucose dehydrogenase on electrode. Okay, we have for in this case I use carbon nanotube as a sample. Yeah, you can functionalize your carbon nanotube, yeah, with some many ligand, and then after that you can immobilize the enzyme to your structure. Okay, and if you see in the left down, left bottom, there are many methods for immobilization enzyme immobilization: adsorption, entrapment, encapsulation, covalent bonding, cross-link aggregate, and cross-link with inert carrier. So many. But the interesting is if we use PP stacking or P interaction, yeah, you can use P interaction between the surface of nanotube, yeah, with the amino acid in the enzyme. If they have benzene ring there, they can interact PP stacking. You can try it. With the PP stacking, the transfer electron between enzyme and electrode is faster. And this one is implantable sensor. How the sensor implanted into the tissue, yeah, the body tissue, and then also not only implantable but also wearable. So for now we know Google Glass, yeah Google Glass, yeah. Jadi and then in the future, the glucose sensor is like very small, the small one, yeah, small, and then can be implant in our body. And in this case, we need AI, yeah, we need AI to help the development of glucose sensor here with Bluetooth or something. So you can see the glucose content in your body from your mobile phone. And the next is self-powered sensor concept. Self-powered. Okay. For implantable biosensor, the energy of sensor itself it's from battery, from the conventional one. But for self-powered sensor, the energy to do the sensing activity come from the body fluid. Yeah. So in the glucose oxidase activity, not only glucose detection, but also uh, the current production, electricity production. This low-cost biosensor is the biosensor is from paper dari kertas. So they casting the electrode in the paper surface. Yeah. So we can reduce the production cost. So the sensor itself, the cost of sensor itself is very cheap. Okay, I think that one is some ways to develop the sensor performance. And this our research is about microbial fuel cell, enzymatic fuel cell, glucose sensor, and energy process design. We develop in material, in electrode, in membrane, in the system, in electronic device also, and is our past collaborator and now collaborator, yeah, from Dong A University, UKM, Sandia National Laboratory in US, and also BRIN, UI, UNER, UNPAD, UPI, and UNES. Also John Hopkins University. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I give the time to Mas Damai.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Marcelinos, for your comprehensive talk about the glucose sensor. Yes, so I think it's very interesting, both of the presentation from Dr. Eda and Dr. Marcelinos Criswardonas. So we move to the next section is question and answer. So for the audience, if you have any question, you can, if you want to directly ask to the speaker, you can raise your hand and talk directly. Or maybe if you shy or prefer to, uh, you can put your question in the chat box. I will read it for you. Okay, so there is Wisnu Arfian Anditya. Please, you can turn on your camera and unmute.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay.
So such a building presentation from two presenters. I'm Wisnu. So I was an alumni of Universitas Diponegoro, and now I'm a researcher at Boku University, Austria. My research topic is about QCM-based sensor. So we develop QCM-based sensor. The receptor we use is molecular imprinted polymer, so it's a bit different, but basically the concept or the principle is generally same. So I have several questions actually to Dr. Eda Johanna. I'm sorry if I'm mistaken. So as far as I know that you develop DNA-based biosensor. And you talk about aptamer-based biosensor. What are the primary limitation of current electrochemical aptamer-based biosensor at the moment? And then, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned about the usability of your generated sensor is up to 2 or 3 times. Why this happen? As we know, compared to chemical sensor, indeed biosensor is more reliable. So, and to be honest, it's more specific. However, in terms of reusability, the chemical sensor is much more durable. So why this happen? And the last one, do you ever try your sensor with real sample, for example, plasma or blood? Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you for your question. Okay, for the first question, the limitation of the aptamer biosensor. Okay, the limitation of aptamer biosensor is how we want to design the aptamer. Because there's a few methods to design selects. Selects is the old method. But if we are using selects, we need to use animals to get the aptamer. But if we use in silico, the computational, we need to use a very high-tech computer. Okay, and for your question number 2, you mentioned about the stability of my research, right? I said it's 2 times. It's not the stability, it's a regeneration. Regeneration means that the sensor can be reused up to 3 times. The same sensor. It's not the stability. Okay, the stability of my research of that sensor, E. coli sensor, is up to 2 months.
No, I mentioned about reusability, not stability.
Sorry, sorry?
I mentioned about reusability, not stability.
Oh, reuse.
Reusability. Why your sensor is up to 2 or 3 times compared to general chemical sensor? We can use chemical sensor up to 10 or 12 times. So why this happens?
Because I'm using biomolecule. Okay, biomolecule is quite different with chemical sensor because it's not so stable as a chemical sensor. So by time the DNA it will what you call dia makin lama dia akan makin musnah the DNA.
Okay, denaturate.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And your third question, can you please repeat? Sorry.
Did you ever try your sensor into real sample, for example, plasma or blood? Did you ever try your sensor into
Right.
plasma or blood?
Okay. Right now, I developed sensor for environmental. So I just use my sensor in the placenta. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for nice question, Mr. Wisnu, and also the answer, Dr. Eka. So maybe anyone who wants to ask to the speaker, might be Kuyayo.
Pak Damar, actually, I write my question in the
Okay,
chat
so yeah.
room. Yeah, but it's okay. I'm going to how to select to read this. So
Yeah.
yeah, actually this topic is very interesting, but it's very hard for me to understand. So the first one, my question is, what is the requirement for materials? For example, like Dr. Marcel, I guess he informed us about so many sources that we can use, like carbon-based materials, DNA or protein, yeah, and metal oxide and so on. Yeah. So what is the requirement for materials which can be applied as a sensor? Last week when I visited USM, Dr. Eda also, how to say, informed me that my CQDS or carbon quantum dots also can be used as a sensor. Yeah. So what is the requirement? And then the second one, in sensor mechanism, as you inform us in your presentation, there is an electron transfer. So is it compulsory for materials to have like electrical conductivity, or should it be semiconductor or conductor, or maybe insulator? Is it possible also for insulator can be used as materials as well? It's very interesting because I also asked Dr. Eda last week to have a collaboration to use CQDS material for sensor as well. Thank you, Pak Damar. Back to you.
Amin. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, because I think it's more interesting if you directly ask to the speaker. So okay, Dr. Marcel, would you mind to answer the question from Bu Yayu?
Okay, thank you for good question, Bu Yayu. Okay, the requirement for material, right, for the applied sensor. The first thing is that material should be conductive, because what we want in the sensor is about sensitivity, high sensitivity, and high sensitivity can be achieved if the material itself is conductive. Okay. We For me it is not possible using semiconductor, yeah, or insulator, because semiconductor we know that they uh, uh, use for energy storage system, and insulator, yeah, we know that insulator cannot transfer the electron. Okay. The first requirement for sensor. I think not only glucose sensor, the general sensor, the general electrochemical sensor need the conductive material electrode. The second is only for enzyme biosensor. If you develop enzyme biosensor, not only conductive only not enough. You need other requirement. The requirement is that material also can entrap or can immobilize enzyme many sebanyak-banyaknya. You can for example, I use CNT, PEI, and glucose oxidase. PEI in this case as the entrapment polymer. The entrapment polymer is the act they acting as glue to entrap the glucose oxidase, so that the glucose oxidase loaded in the surface of carbon nanotube, and then can be used as electrode of sensor or anode of fuel cell. I think like that, Dr. Yayu.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Dr. Marcel. Is it enough, Bu Yayu?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Dr. Ede also can add some information regarding this question because last week Dr. Ede also told me that C dots can be used as well as a sensor. Thank you.
Okay, maybe Dr. Eda, can you add some information according to the Bu Yayu request? Hello?
Hello, Dr. Eda, can you hear my voice? Hello?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Dr. Eda, probably you can add some information regarding my question about like C dot can be applied as well as a sensor.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just like Dr. Marcelina said, the material must be conductive, but that's specific to the electrochemical biosensor. But if you are using optical biosensor, it depends. It because optical, if there's a changes color, so it can be optic, right? Okay, so it doesn't need the material to be conductive. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah, Dr. Ede. So maybe for all the audience, anyone who wants to ask a question to our speakers today?
I see in the chat room. Oh, I think Professor Hollet also asked. I will copy it in
I
this
don't
chat.
see.
Okay. Yeah, because he directly asked to me.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Thank you, Bu Yayu, to help me to copy the
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
So I will read the question from Professor Khalid. Yes, I use potentiometry, not amperometry method for glucose determination. Did you have experience about potentiometry method for glucose sensor? Maybe uh, Dr. Marcel first, maybe, yeah, because your topic mainly about glucose sensor. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Damar. Prof. Khalid, I don't have experience using potentiometry method because when I was in PhD, I use amperometric because amperometric is more easier to to do for sensor analysis. And in the most of potentiostat, I think they have amperometric um, amperometric mode amperometric mode compared to potentiometry mode, I think. And then I don't have experience for potentiometry. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Dr. Marcel. So maybe, Dr. Eda, do you want to share maybe you ever tried using a potentiometry or yeah?
Okay. Me too. I don't have any experience using potentiometry.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, Prof. Khalid, are you in here? Maybe is it enough or you want to give some feedback regarding the answer? Oh, maybe no, yeah. Oh yeah, please, Prof. Khalid.
Yeah, enough. But I
Oh,
have another question, yeah,
okay,
especially
please.
for Mr. Marcel, yeah. How about LOD, limit of detection, and maybe range of measurement, yeah, and selectivity. Maybe you also measure or not. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mas Damar. Success for all presenter, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Khalid. Maybe Mas Marcel, you can answer.
Yes, thank you, Mas Damar. For LOD, limit of detection, this depend on the structure of electrode. If you are ingat tadi about the Michaelis-Menten curve, the Michaelis-Menten curve in the y-axis is from Michaelis-Menten curve we can get the current, the maximal current. Yeah. The maximal current and the Km, the apparent Michaelis-Menten constant from Michaelis-Menten curve, the value is different in every structure. So what we want if this structure give the high maximal current. Maximal current means the LOD is also high. And also we want to get the lowest Km. It means the lowest Km means the sensitivity of biosensor is high. The stability, the stability and the selectivity and the good or not the performance of biosensor can be shown from the curve of Michaelis-Menten. I think this is my answer.
Okay, thank you, Mas Marcel. Anyone? There is a question from the audience, maybe, or maybe anybody that put the question, that answer the question to Buyayo again, or no? Okay, if there is no question from audience, maybe I will ask to you, Dr. Eda, because one of the job of moderator is asking a question to the speaker. No, just kidding. Okay, Dr. Eda, I have a question. I saw that you doing in silico besides research in laboratory. Yes, is it right? Hello, Dr. Eda, can you hear me?
Yes, what was the question? In silico?
Yeah, I saw in your presentation that you are doing in silico. I mean, like computational in your research besides experiment in laboratory. Yes, is it right?
Okay.
Okay, so my question is, how about the result? I mean that is it a linear between the in silico and also in the lab, in the experiment in the laboratory, or there is some gap, the difference in result? And how can in silico really help the laboratory experiment? We know that in silico is like a prediction before we doing in the laboratory. Okay, thank you. Maybe this is my question.
Okay. In silico, when we are doing in silico, it can reduce the need of the cell labs, because if you are using cell labs, it might take a really long time if you're using cell labs. If you are using cell labs, the aptamer maybe can design a year, more than a year. So when we are using in silico, we can reduce the time, maybe up to 2 months or less. It depends on our target. Okay, so if the target is bigger, so we need more time to get the aptamer design. Okay, and after we get the aptamer design. Actually, we have a few candidates of the aptamer of one target, and then we try it in the wet lab, and we see which one give a good result. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your answer. It's very insightful because actually this topic is very hard to me. Same with the bios. So I don't I cannot imagine how about the in silico what. So after your explanation, I get it because it's also hard to design, yeah, and takes time. So in silico help to reduce the time that you need to design the experiment like this, yeah. So it become more effective, yeah, in silico.
Okay. I'm really sorry because right here in Malaysia is rain heavily, so
Oh,
the internet connection is not so good, so
okay,
I
okay, no
can't
problem.
clearly hear you.
No.
But you can text. You
Okay,
can
okay.
write at the chat box.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, no problem, Dr. Eda. Thank you. And maybe I also have question to Mas Marcel. Yeah. So your explanation is very comprehensive. My question is, what are the main advantage and the limitation of using glucose biosensor for diabetes testing instead of traditional blood glucose monitoring methods? So the advantage and the limitation if we compare to the traditional ones. Okay. Thank you, Mas Marcel.
Okay, thank you, Mas Damar. Good question. The advantage of the continuous monitoring system, glucose monitoring system, we can provide the real-time glucose level at that time, the glucose level at that time, and also time by time. You can know, you can see your glucose level now and previous 5 minutes, previous 10 minutes, because you know the log log data of your glucose, and also less invasive. Some biosensor likes require what finger pick. For example, the portable one, the portable you buy in the apothec. If you pick using your hand, maybe your hand is not clean, and there is some bacteria or others which can what interrupt and make the sensitivity of glucose sensor is reduced. But using a continue glucose sensor, the glucose sensor is where in your hand or where in your wrist, in here, like jam tangan, yeah, like jam tangan, and then you can easily monitor your glucose level. And also but the limitation is about the calibration. It's very hard, very difficult to calibrate the implantable glucose sensor, because your biomolecule in your body beside the glucose is also changes in every times, that can also affect to the stability, the specificity of the glucose sensor which implanted in your body. I think that's the answer, Mas Damar.
Okay, the answer is very complete, yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcel, for your answer. And unfortunately, the time is over, and we finally arrived in the end of this panel session. We would like to thank you again for Dr. Eda and also Mas Marcel for sharing your research, your knowledge, and your insights. So it can eager our motivation to do research and get a better result. And also for the all of the audience, I also appreciate for your contribution and your participation. And I hope you come again to the next webinar series in the next week with Dr. Tenwini as a speaker. So it will be very interesting in the 1st November, ya, Bu Ayu, ya. Yeah. So I think enough from me. I also apologize for all of the my mistakes and inconvenience. Thank you very much for your attention and see you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon all.